Would you like to share your experiences as far as war is concerned? What you experience and how it is and how it was and things like that?
So in terms of my experiences of combat,
Yes.
so I think my first deployment, it was dangerous, and there were IEDs, and there was, there were IEDs, and there were threats of small arms fire, and there was Taliban all around us. We definitely almost got blown up a number of times. But in terms of combat, I actually didn't experience that much combat on the first deployment. Kevin Schranz, my co-author, got in a firefight on that first deployment, but it actually was relatively light. My second deployment is where things actually started heating up in terms of my experience with combat and actually getting shot at, shooting back. And my section leader, Sergeant Daniel Batillion, he was killed on that second deployment on December 23rd of 2013. But in terms of the experience of combat, I think it's hard. I was trying to explain this to some, some people understand it, some people get it, some people have issues, some people ask about it, and it's a very complex topic. But there's something almost beautiful about combat, in my opinion, and I think a lot of guys would agree with me in that combat is very simple. It's you're there and there's someone else and they're trying to kill you and you're trying to kill them, and it's very simple in that respect. And life oftentimes isn't that simple. Life is very complex, and we have problems, and we have society and relationships and family and governments and politics and religion and all this. Life is a very complex, messy affair. But combat is not messy. Combat is black and white. You either go out on the field and you either come back alive or you don't, or you're wounded or you're not. And you either kill the man who's trying to kill you or he killed you. And that sort of duplicity is actually very liberating, so to speak. And it's kind of like the first time I got shot at, it was the most realist thing in the world of bullets coming by, and then you hear the crack, 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 and then rounds are snapping by, and then it's obvious you're there, and you know the deal beforehand, right? It's not like you're just parachuted into combat and then you say, oh no, what are people are shooting at me now. It's like you're there to kill the people trying to kill you, and that they are there and they are trying to kill you as well. But it's not until that first visceral experience of, oh, they're trying to kill me, and those bullets aren't paintball, they're not airsoft, it's not for training, you're not at the shooting range and the rounds are coming over your head. It's like, no, somebody is at the other end of that weapon system and they want you to die, and you have your weapon system and you want them to die, preferably before they kill you. And that sort of duality is the substance of what combat is. And I mean, in terms of that's the small arms aspect, because a lot of the stuff we were doing were firefights, and the same thing with IED, right? I mean, we step on a bomb, you either live or die, kind of thing. And I mean, you go back, I'm sure, the eras that you're studying with swords and swordsmanship and martial arts and stuff. I mean, you engage with somebody with a sword, there's only one winner in a sword fight, right? In that close combat regard. But I think in terms of a philosophical approach to combat, that's sort of the duality of it. And there's very few things in life that sort of are that simple. And I try to explain that to people, and some people understand it, and some people are like, what, you just like killing people? Or someone the other day was saying like, I guess like gore excites you, and like, dead bodies excite you. And it's like, that has absolutely nothing to do with it, kind of thing. And people are missing the point if they're asking questions like that. So.
And when you experienced that, I mean, first time that you were being shot at, of course, everyone who has had military training goes through training, knows, but nothing is like real combat, right? Let's put it, I mean, in a much softer, if you want to call it that way. Let's take Mike Tyson's statement. I mean, Mike Tyson, I mean, I really Mike, you know, I know some people, but okay, I really Mike. I have always, I like Mike Tyson. And he said, everyone has a plan until he gets punched in the face, right? That's what hey, this is a lovely statement. You have all the plans. I bring you to the ring and do it. And once you get a heavy hook or an uppercut or a cross, then you realize, my God, right? So I think, you know, if you transfer it to much more deadly force, I mean, which from boxing, which is of course dangerous. People don't realize you are a professional fighter, how much it, you know, it can hurt you. But in your field, it is then killing, right? So is it like, does this apply that even the first time people shoot at you, it's just like a very, how can I say, shocking experience the first time? I mean, I can tell you as a full contact fighter, when you fight first time, full contact, be it Kyokushin, bare knuckle, or be it MMA, you know, I did all these things, or be it kickboxing, boxing, the first time the guy hits you hard, you just say, oh God, what the hell am I doing here, right? You know, and then you get used to it, right? And then you get used to it. And then one day, when you get hit, you just say, so is it all what you can give? You know, so it's this process of getting used to this whole things. Is it the same thing in the army? Can I say that? That you get?
Yeah,
I mean,
I would agree. I would agree with that completely. Because I mean, there were times. I mean, there have been times where, you know, bullets have came at us on patrol, and we actually were laughing, or we actually had, you know, expressions of whatever, or, you know, stuff like that. And like one particular, you know, after several firefights, one particular time, I remember I was getting in my vehicle, and as I was getting in my vehicle, like a round cracked directly over the top of the vehicle, like it whistled over, like like that. And you know, my reaction was, just want to go back, and I just like closed the door and just slammed it. You know, it wasn't like, and I wasn't, because when it was coming and we were getting hit from the right side and my vehicle door was open, right? Because I was just getting in, and then a round cracked over, and you know, I'm like, and then my reaction wasn't, oh crap, they're shooting at us, I got to get this door closed. It was, it's been a long day, let's get out of here, and I closed the door. You know, so as you're saying, you know, it becomes, you know, you learn to live with it, so to speak, and then you have those different reactions to it, and you start to learn, okay, this is close, this is far, I can work with this, I can't work with this, you know. So yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that. But that first time is very, you know, wow, this is happening kind of thing. And then after that, as you become more experienced, as you're saying, you get in more firefights and you learn how to return fire and concentrate on stuff, you know, then the clarity sort of comes through, and you can actually be in combat and take fire, and you can actually say, I can work with this. I don't need to, you know, this isn't a big deal, so to speak.
I think, could you please tell us, I'm sure once you see someone is injured or next to you, this is it's one of the worst experiences every human being can make, right? Seeing someone dead or injured, heavily injured. Am I correct saying this?
It is. It does suck. I think. I don't know, because between someone being injured or someone being killed, both are bad, but in different ways. I mean, I remember, you know, carrying bodies, and you know, there's just like, you just get these like the feeling of carrying bodies, and things stick to you, like the smell of stuff. And I remember like the smell of bodies that I've carried and that were brought in or they've been dead for a while. And what's especially poignant to me is people that have been dead for several hours. It's this slaughterhouse smell, and I've only smelt it in slaughterhouses. And it's like, wow, that's, the first time I smelt it, I was like, that's a really weird smell. And then later on, I'm like, oh, that's the smell of death. That's why it's weird, and you feel that way. But in terms of with casualties and stuff, I think with casualties, it sucks and you see it, but especially with casualties, because with casualties, you have a job to do. You're so focused with, okay, you're providing fire to keep the casualty as to get them out of harm's way, or you need to get this, or if you're tasked with the casualty, you need to get that casualty out of there. The casualty, the guy in pain becomes less of a distraction, and now he becomes a task that you have to accomplish. And okay, now this guy's injured really badly. We have to get him out. Yeah, he's in pain, and yeah, that's a bloody wound, or yeah, that's a big mess of a wound or something. It's like, yep, but this truck isn't going to drive itself, or this guy isn't going to move himself, or that helicopter isn't going to be called in on its own. So the task overwhelms the severity of it. And I think for inexperienced guys, it's that they can be overcome with, oh my gosh, his arm's blown off, or oh my gosh, he's shot through there, and you're just sort of sitting there gaping at the wound, and you're like, oh, what's happening? You can't believe it. You've never seen another human being in such a horrible condition. And then it's that little bit of experience that starts kicking in, and then for those inexperienced guys, you can kick them and you can say, hey, I need you to drive this vehicle. I need you to call this person. I need you to write this stuff down about him. And now the horribly wounded person becomes a task that you have to accomplish like any other task. And if you've gone through the right training and you've been through a rigorous training environment, now you're conditioned to jump into that task, and now you're treating that task like anything else. I think that would be my answer for that question.
If I may say so, I as you know that I was reading your book, and really, may I don't want to read your book back to you. It's just not very, it's very polite, but I just picked up something. Okay. I think this part was written by Kevin specifically, which says, my battalion only had 3 men die in action. My company had no man killed and only a handful of wounded. The actions we were engaged in were small affairs by standards of battle. The engagements we were in usually had us enjoying superior numbers, and as far as I saw, the Taliban didn't have tanks or helicopters and support. But what is battle apart from a large group of individual people trying to kill each other? Let us sink in. I was not at Kursk, Normandy, Okinawa, Hue City, but the fields, hills, and the compounds of Buldak, Habibabad, Shawal, and Matak all had young men from different parts of the world trying their best to outsmart and kill each other. You tell me your war was worse than mine. All are the same. I was really very well written, and then what you wrote, together as infantrymen, we formed a side of America that is not often brought to bear, and when it is often categorized as some awesome war machine. Within that war machine, we had our own culture, our own way of being, our own semblance of identity that allowed us to become what we were. For better or worse, a band of brothers and killers of men. That identity is being a Marine infantryman in the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan. Could you expand on these, please, for us?
So what Kevin, and you guessed correctly with Kevin. He absolutely, those are Kevin's words. And Kevin was just like me in a lot of ways. Now, we were both these military history buffs, and that's something that especially in the infantry, in the competitive environment, you're always trying to juggle with, right? It's like, because especially just being young men anywhere, it's like like, how do I stack up against the guys that came before me, and what did I go through, and how does that compare? So what Kevin is trying to show is, what Kevin is trying to say is that, I wasn't at Kursk, I wasn't at the Battle of the Bulge, I wasn't at Okinawa, I wasn't at the Shosin Reservoir, but I was here, and this was my fight, and this was the fight that I went through. And you can't compare me to something like that. And that's always a struggle that I think a lot of infantrymen are going through. In terms of, what did I see? Was it nothing? Was it anything? In reality, what me and Kevin both know is, all the firefights that we went through, if you mash them all together, that was maybe 5 minutes on Iwo Jima, and it's like, we're not oblivious to that fact, but Kevin is just trying to put that out there as, this was our fight. They had theirs and this was ours. Like, would you like, asking if you want to learn about us, this is what we went through. Compare us or not. That was it. That was our point there. The second point on the paragraph there that I wrote, really digs into more of the what I was trying to imply there and get at, is that there's, this is another point as well, in tying either a political or patriotic standpoint or everything with the fight, right? And that's kind of what I was trying to show is tell the audience is, there's a side of the Marine infantry that has nothing to do with the red, white, and blue, and has nothing to do with patriotism, has nothing to do with any of that. In fact, all that stuff goes right out the window when you deploy and then when you're in there. And that's something that I'm personally fascinated by across the world, because outside of the fighting, it's all these politicians and everyone else. I don't care what country it is, whether it's, communist China or America or the Soviet Union or Iran versus Iraq and stuff. It's like all these politicians and society decides what the fight is about, sort of thing. But to the young men on the ground, it's a different world entirely, and that's why I'm sort of drawn, myself personally, I'm drawn to young men who are fighting in a lot of these conflicts, because I know what it's like to be them, and I want to sort of sit in their shoes and go what they're going through, and I identify with them. It doesn't matter whether I'm talking to Iraqi soldiers or fighters in Syria or in Burma, for example. I like talking to guys my age who are in that same capacity. It's sort of, let's take this political stuff and just put it aside for a second, and let's just get into what we see is on the ground, sort of deal. And that's what I was trying to show with the book, and I hope it would come out for the audience. It's not, there isn't some political motivation or there's a political motivation or we're fighting for America, fighting against terrorism everywhere, and because at the end of the day, it's like I got out of Afghanistan, and in 2016 I found out my patrol base was overrun, and you find out, like, well, you find out everything was a lie and everything was a joke, and like, why did we do all this? Why did we cause so much pain and suffering? Like, what was the point? Because if you're trying to stand on that, that plateau, so to speak, of, oh, this was a just war, it was just like that is the biggest load of hogwash anywhere in the world, in any conflict everywhere. So it's, from my perspective, I'm more interested in the fight. I'm more interested in the men. I'm more interested in the struggle right there. Everything else, I can't control that. And that's something as well. With me growing up, if I had grown up in a different era, I think I would have been just as motivated to go in. I wasn't motivated by 9/11 or the war on terror or all this other stuff. I wasn't motivated by any of that. It was it was definitely a big element there as, you know, a teenager, and it's like, oh, let's get back at 9/11. But that's just, you know, that's just an excuse, so to speak. If I had been born in the 80s and it would have been 1990s peacetime America, I would have enlisted in the Marine infantry just the same. I would have done the exact same thing. So